Hi everyone, welcome to day 2 of graphing quadratic functions. Before break, we were factoring things like ax squared plus bx plus c. And now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be graphing what these look like. So we have been graphing, we graphed lines first semester. On day 1, you learned about graphing absolute value. And today we're going to be graphing these things called a quadratic. And a quadratic has that little x squared attached, okay? So we're going to be graphing those. But first we need to know the different dynamics of the graph and what the equation looks like. So we're going to be focusing on something called vertex form, which means that the vertex is actually in the graph. So if you notice there's an h on the inside, well that is known as that will be our x value, and then the k is going to be our y value, okay? And the hk is our starting point, okay? It's whether it's going to be the highest point or the lowest point on the graph. And then on each side of it, it will be symmetrical. So if this was our vertex, and then it's going to be symmetrical on either side, okay? And then we would graph from there. So we'll learn to graph later on. So changing the graph from the parent function. So if the parent function is y equals x squared, that's where we start off from. And then from there, we are off to the races. So h, let's put a parentheses around there so then we remember that the h is on the inside of the parentheses with x, okay? That tells us whether we go left or if we go right. And then the k is on the outside. We are either going to go up or down. Okay, and let's, we can add things along the way. A tells us whether it's going to stretch, if it's greater than 1, or if it's going to compress, which means that it's less than 1, okay? So if it's a fraction, it's going to be wider, and if it stretches, meaning if it's greater than 1, it's going to go up faster, okay? So if the graph is negative, okay, or if it opens down, let's say that, sorry. If the graph opens down, I'm changing it. Go with it. If A is negative. Okay, so remember y equals mx plus b, guys? The b would tell us whether if it went uphill or downhill. And then the b was our starting point. The same idea happens here, guys. The a is our slope and the hk is our starting point. All right, so it looks a little complicated, but we will get through this. So let's graph the parent function. So I want to plug -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 and see what this thing looks like. So if I have -2 squared, that's a positive 4. -1 squared is 1. Do you see how I'm putting it in parentheses? 0 squared is 0, 1, and then we have 4. So if you notice, it is symmetrical. 2, 4, -2, 4 have the same y. And the same thing happens with -1, 1. And then we have 0, 0, which is our vertex. So let's graph this, and then we can look at patterns from there. So this unit for sure is all about those patterns. So patterns on each side. There we go. So this is our parent function. It starts at 0, 0, and then we have points on either side. This is known as a parabola. Okay? It's a fancy way of saying it's a U shape when your absolute value was a V shape. All right, so let's move right along to number 2. So what does this mean? So my vertex, so this number on the inside, if you can recall, y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Now the h is going to be opposite, so that's very important to know. Opposite. So if it says +1, you're going to write a -1, okay? And then the k is as what it looks like, so that's -2. So my vertex, what this means is left 1, down 2. So left 1, down 2 is my starting point. The a value, there's nothing in front of the parentheses, so your a equals 1. All right? Now we can plot some more points and see what happens, okay? So let's plug in 0 to here and see what happens. So 0, plug in 0 to here. So then I have 1 squared minus 2. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So you can plug in 0, negative 1. And if you notice, it's going to be the same on the opposite side of the vertex. So if it's 0, negative 1, then I have the same thing on this side. So negative 2, negative 1 would be on this side. And then you can go from there. You can plug in more points. Please ask your teachers. They all have different methods in graphing these, and they can give you some shortcuts. Okay? Now let's look at our domain. So domain means the x values. So what on earth are the x values? Well, the x values, I can plug anything into x and you'll get a number. Even if it's all the way up here, you'll get a number. So domain is all real numbers. And how you can write that is an R with an extra line in it. Okay? Now let's look at our range. Let's look at our y values. Okay, so our y values are negative 2 and above. So if you notice, that is my k value. So it's negative 2 and above. So how am I going to write that? Y is greater than or equal to negative 2. So you can write it that way. Okay, so now let's look at A. So I want you guys to look at the number inside. So it says minus 3, and I learned that it's the opposite. So I'm going to write 3. My K is the 1. All right, why do I write HK? Because I don't want to get confused with this X and Y. All right, so now I'm going to graph this point. Over 3, 1, 2, 3, up 1. All right, from there, my A value is 1. So then you can kind of go over 1 and up 1 on either side. Okay? That's what your A value says, and then you can go from there. Again, please ask your teacher, and they will give you some tricks on how to graph more points. You can also always plug in the points and see what happens. So let's say I plug in 0 again. 0 is kind of a good indicator of what's going on. Okay? So 0 minus 3 squared, well, that's negative 3 squared, which is positive 9 plus 1, which is 10. Holy cow, so you're going to be 0 all the way up to the 10. So that might be hard to graph. So what if you just plugged in 1? Okay, so try that again. So let's plug in 1 and see what we get. So it's good to kind of talk this out and see what you have. So then you have negative 2 squared plus 1. So you have 4 plus 1, which is 5. So over 1, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, how far away is that from this vertex? Well, it's 2 points away. So I'm going to go 2 points the opposite way, and it's going to be the same y values. And there we go. So now let's look at the domain. Again, the domain is all real numbers, so I'm going to write that fancy R. Now let's look at our range. Your range has to do with that y value. So everything has to do with, works together. So look at your information from your graph. Okay, and see what's going on. So this point is 1, so y is greater than or equal to 1. There's no y values smaller than 1. Everything is 1 and above, okay, because it opens up. All right, now let's look at these next few. A little bit different and a little bit the same. So again, I'm going to rewrite y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So then I know what I'm doing. All right, so I have negative x squared plus 2. So my vertex, is there a parentheses? No, so your h is 0. Your outside number is 2. So your vertex will be 0, 2. Now let's look at what's in front of the x squared. Well, I see a negative. Well, that means it's going to open down, okay? So it's not going to open up, it's going to open down. So let's see how that affects your domain and range. So let's plug 0, 2. So I'm going to go, 0 up 2, and I know it's going to open down. So I can put a negative 1 on both sides. Again, you can plug in points if you want to and see what's going on. This is the tricky part, okay? The negative is not attached to the x when I'm plugging in points. So let's plug in negative 2. So negative 2 squared is 4, and I have a negative in front. So negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. So I'm going to plot negative 2, negative 2. So I'm going to go over 2, down 2. Okay, now how far away is that from the vertex? Well, that's 2 away. So then I can go 2 the other way, and now I have my quadratic. So again, plugging in points or asking your teacher a different method if they want to show you. Okay, so you can't go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Why? Because it's to the squared. Okay, when it's squared, it's going to go up faster. All right, next one. Again, oh, sorry. I need to do domain and range. Hello. So domain, all real numbers. Again, you can plug anything in for x value. X is not restricted. Okay, your range, oh man, how is this different? Well, it's opening down, and your starting point is the 2. So instead of it being greater than 2, it's less than or equal to 2. So then that's what your symbol would be. All right. So look at your equation. Find the vertex, find your a in front of the x squared, graph it, and then identify your domain and range. All right, let's go a little bit faster. Number inside is 2, opposite is -2. Okay, h is -2, k is 3. Now, think about which one of these affects the range. All right, domain is all real numbers, a is -1. All right, so I know it's going to open down, so that's going to affect my range. And then let's plug in some points. So my starting point is -2, up 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a negative, so I'm going to go down 1 over 1 for the first round, and then I can plug in points. Okay? If you don't want to plug in points, again, ask your teacher, please. So 2 squared is 4. -4 plus 3 is -1. Okay, so I plugged in 0, and my answer is -1. Remember, the negative is outside the x squared. Okay, so 0, -1. So 0, -1. How far away is that from the vertex? That's 2. So then I can model it on the other side. And there we go. So then we want to make sure that we get that U shape when we're graphing. What is the highest point? Well, that is my y value or my k value, right? So then I put it down here. Y is less than or equal to 3 because that is my highest y value and everything is below that. All right. Thank you for sticking with me. I want you to look at these two and see what you notice. Can you identify the vertex, the a value, the domain, and range? So I want you to try number 4 and then check back. So I want to look back at the pattern. So if you notice, when it was a -1, we went down 1 over 1 just for the first set, guys. After that, we need to plug in points or again, ask your teacher, this is down 3 and over 1. This is down 3 over 1. There's some type of pattern there, okay? Figuring out what that pattern is. When it's +1, we went up 1 over 1 both sides, and then we went up 3 over 1. Crazy, right? So we noticed that 1, 3, 5 situation, and your teachers might ask you about that, okay? Now, when it's a 2 in front, when our A is a 2, if you notice, we went up 2 over 1, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. All right, so noticing because of that 2, that changed our pattern. Okay, again, if that's kind of confusing to you, again, plug in points. So what if I plugged in -1? So 2, -1 minus 1 squared minus 4, and then 2 times -2 squared minus 4. We've got the squared, so 4 times 2 minus 4, and I have 8 minus 4 equals 4. And there we go, -1 up 4. So plugging in those points. I know we haven't graphed in a while, so give yourself some time to work these out. All right? So vertex, 1, -4. A value, A equals 2. Domain, all real numbers. And range, Y is greater than or equal to -4 because it opens up. All right, the next one, we only have 3 more to go, guys. There's no parentheses, so my H is 0. My K is 5. What does that affect? Well, that affects my range. I know my number is going to be 5. Now we have to determine if it's going to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. Well, let's look at that. A value is -1/3. That means it's going to compress. So this went up way fast. This negative 1/3 is going to change things. Okay, and the domain is all real numbers. Okay, it's negative also, so it's going to open down, right? It's going to open down, and it's a compress. All right, let's go back to your notes real quick. Okay, and if it opens down, it's negative, and it's a reflection. Okay, so make sure you put that back in there. Really important that you guys are filling out the box too. Alrighty, here we go. So let's plug something in. Let's start with the 0, 0, 5. So up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know that it's going to open down. Okay, so let's just plug in. Let's plug in 3. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's plug in 3 and see what we have on either side. Okay, so 3 squared is 9 times negative 1/3 plus 5. Well, the 9 over 3, that's a 3. And negative 1 times 3 is negative 3 plus 5, which is 2. So I plug in 3, and my answer is 2. Okay, so if you notice, it's not going very fast down. It's not a stretch. Again, it's a compress, meaning it's going to be a very wide U. Okay? All right. Again, negative 1/3 times that 9. You can, again, multiply across, or again, you can cross cancel. So 3, 2. So over 3, 1, 2, 3, up 2. Now, how far away is that from this vertex? Well, it's 3 points. So let's go the opposite way. 1, 2, 3. And let's look at that. There we go. Okay. Now, it's opening downward, so my range is y is less than or equal to 5. My highest y value is here, and then the highest y value is 5, and then everything below that. All right, guys, we've got 2 more. Okay. It's so important to ask questions, please, especially for this unit. It can be quite tricky. So inside is 3, so the opposite would be negative 3, and there's nothing on the outside, so I'm going to make that a 0. My a value is negative 4. What does that mean? Well, the 4 means it's a stretch. It's going to be kind of a skinny u value, right? And then the negative means that it's a reflect, and it's going to open down. So there's a lot going on. But when you're plotting points, you can kind of check to see where we're at, right? So what does this mean? Oh, this means it's going to go left 3, and it means that it's going to be a stretching U, and it's going to reflect, so it opens down. So domain is all real numbers. The range, without even graphing, I know that my y value is 0. It opens down, therefore it's less than or equal to. Whew, that's a lot of information. Let's graph. So negative 3, 0. So over 3, 1, 2, 3. And I have negative 3, 0. Now, what does that negative 4 mean? Well, you can go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. Again, you have to do it on both sides because it's a reflection. If you're like, I don't know about that, Miss Robson. All right, well then let's plug in negative 2 and see what happens. So I'm going to plug in negative 2 in for x and see what I get as my answer. Okay, so plugging in something for x and then finding your y. Input, output. Whew, all these things we haven't seen in a long time. All right, so I have negative 4 times 1 squared. Well, I have to do the 1 squared first, which is 1, times negative 4 is negative 4. So I have negative 2, negative 4 as one of my points. So negative 2, negative 4. Oh, and there is my point. Okay, the same thing would happen if if I plugged in negative 4, I would also get negative 4 as my answer. Okay, that squared button means that I get 2 outputs, right? I have 2 x values, and my outputs become the same in order to get that U shape. Whew. All right, last one. I don't have an H or a K, so my vertex is 0, 0. My A is 1/2, so that means I have a compress. My domain is all real numbers, and my range is y is greater than or equal to 0. It opens up, and my y or my K value is 0. So let's plug that in. What on earth happens when I have 1/2? Well, let's plug in 2 and see what happens. If I get 2 squared, I have 4. And what is half of 4? Well, that would be 2. So I'm going to plot the point 2, 2. So over 2, up 2. Over 2, up 2. All right? And there's our graph. All right, so thank you so much for joining me. I know this is a pretty tricky concept, so please ask questions, and we'll see you in the halls. Have a great day.